about James Bond's Seven First Light is that the internet is currently doing what it does best: panicking. Ever since the 30-minute gameplay deep dive dropped last year, the community has been split right down the middle. On one side, you've got the enthusiasts who see the IO Interactive logo and think it's an automatic masterpiece. On the other, you've got the skeptics who saw those frame rate hitches and the baby-faced Bond and immediately labelled the whole thing as Uncharted, light, slop, larp. But here's the thing we need to remember before we start throwing around the S word, slop. We haven't had a proper high-budget Bond game in over a decade. The last time we stepped into the shoes of Seven, it was Seven Legends, a game so painfully mediocre, so creatively bankrupt that it almost killed the franchise's gaming prospects for good. It turned the world's most sophisticated spy into a generic bargain bin FPS clone. So the stakes for First Light aren't just high, they're existential. If this fails, the license probably goes back into a vault for another 20 years. Now that we're sitting here in January 2026, roughly 4 months away from the delayed May 27th release, I've spent a lot of time dissecting that 30-minute playthrough, and while I'm genuinely excited, there are some elephant in the room issues we need to address with a bit of brutal honesty. Let's start with the developer, IO Interactive. If you've played the Hitman World of Assassination trilogy, you know they are literally the only studio on the planet right now that understands social stealth. They don't just build levels, they build ludic loops and Rube Goldberg machines of human behaviour. Their approach to architectural storytelling is second to none. The way a level design tells you exactly what happened in a room before you ever stepped into it. But Bond isn't Agent 47. 47 is a monotone, bald ghost who disappears into the background like a breeze. James Bond is a celebrity. He's the most interesting person in any room he enters, and he usually wants you to know it. The biggest fear I had when this was announced was that IO would just give us Hitman 4 with a licensed skin. The same stiff mechanical animations, but with a full head of hair. But looking at the Slovakian mission, you can see they're trying to move away from 47's rigid nature. Patrick Gibson's Bond moves with what I can only call a silky instinct. He's less of a surgical robot and more of a blunt instrument. That said, we have to be honest, IO games have never been for the TikTok generation. If you're the type of gamer who needs a sensory overload explosion every 30 seconds to keep your brain from rotting, you're going to hate the first half of these missions. They are slow, they require you to eavesdrop on conversations, to navigate social hierarchies, and actually think. But for those of us who want a game that treats us like adults, IO is the exact right developer for this job. However, we have to talk about the technicals, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. During that September playthrough, the FPS and performance were, frankly, on the piss. When the action ramped up, especially during that high-speed car chase and the massive airport sequence, the frame rate dipped into what looked like the 15 to 20 FPS range. It was a PowerPoint presentation with high-end textures. Now, I've seen people on Reddit calling it unplayable garbage, but we have to maintain a bit of perspective. The game was originally meant for a March release and got pushed to May 27th specifically for polish. IO Interactive is using their Glacier engine, which is notoriously demanding and usually requires a massive optimization pass in the final months. Given that we have 4.5 months until launch, I'm not hitting the panic button yet. If they can't get a stable 60 FPS on the PS5 Series X by May, then we have a real problem. But for now, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're currently in the optimizing the hell out of it phase. One detail that absolutely floored me in the footage was the commitment to branding and immersion. Usually, licensed games give you legally distinct cars that look like a knockoff GTA vehicle with a fake name. Not here. We've got official Jaguars and Aston Martins. Seeing the DBS and the new Valhalla in 4K glory is nice for a change. It adds a layer of tactile realism that the franchise has missed. And yes, I noticed it. I know many of you don't give an absolute toss about small animations, but seeing Bond actually change gears while driving, that's the kind of immersion that makes a world feel real. Plus, and this is my favourite detail, Bond actually uses his indicators during the chase. He clearly isn't a BMW driver, thank God. It sounds like a joke, but those small touches tell you that the developers aren't just making a product, they're making a Bond experience. It shows an attention to detail that extends beyond the gunplay and into the very soul of the character. The stealth mechanics have seen the most interesting evolution of the Hitman formula. In Hitman, NPC were basically blind to anything that wasn't a direct trespassing violation. But in First Light, the AI seems a tad more suspicious. Take the wheelbarrow moment from the demo. Instead of just climbing the wall because the game mechanics allow it, Bond has to casually light a pile of leaves in a wheelbarrow to create a smoke distraction. It's subtle, it's nonchalant, it's very Seven, but the bluff mechanic is the real game changer here. In Hitman, if you were caught, the jig was up. You were either running or gunning. In First Light, you can actually use Bond's charisma as a systemic resource. If you have enough instinct, which seems to be a limited resource you earn by playing well, you can actually talk your way out of a restricted area. In the footage, we hear Bond say, "I think you've got the wrong man, officer. I'm with the press corps." It's refreshing. Mayor, it's another way to pass guards without just stealing a disguise or hiding in a bin for the 10,000th time. My only concern is whether this will become a win button. If I can just bluff my way through every single encounter, the challenge might go tits up. I'm hoping there's a risk-reward system where, if you hang around too long after a bluff, the AI realises you're a fraud and sends the cavalry. When the stealth fails and the license to kill meter fills up, the game turns into something much more visceral than I expected. The gunplay looks standard, nothing that's going to reinvent the shooter genre, but the environmental interaction is top tier. You can throw enemies about like a total ragdoll. Once Bond gets onto that cargo plane, the brawling looks addictive. I'm probably going to end up throwing more guards than Hank Aaron threw baseballs. And look at the improvisational combat. You're not just shooting, you're swatting enemies across pool tables, mersing pool balls at their heads, and twatting doorknobs off to lock enemies in rooms. This is what I mean by systemic depth. It feels less like Call of Duty and more like John Wick. Personally, I'm sick to death of just shooting my way out of every problem in games these days. Seeing a focus on using the environment even during a gunfight is a huge win. It rewards players for being observant rather than just having fast reflexes. So is 7 First Light really worth your time, or does it just look average like some of the louder voices are saying? Maybe my expectations are lower than an old bin's tits these days, but I was actually genuinely surprised by what I saw. You can see the Hitman DNA everywhere, but IO has successfully tweaked the mechanics to actually feel like James Bond. It's faster, it's more charismatic, and it's significantly more physical. The fact that they showed 30 minutes of raw gameplay 6 months before release, even with the frame rate issues, suggests they are immensely confident. Most developers shy away and show barely anything until the week of launch because they know their game is absolute dog shit. IO putting it all out there is a good sign of transparency. I actually like Patrick Gibson as Bond too. He's got that reckless recruit energy that fits a 26-year-old Seven perfectly. He's not the polished icon yet, he's a bullet without a target, as Fleming once wrote. He's raw, he's making mistakes, and he's earning that tuxedo. If you hate stealth games, this won't change your mind. It's still an IO game at its core, but if you've been waiting for a Bond game that actually understands the spy part of the job, the luxury, the tension, and the social manipulation, this could genuinely change the future of the series for the better. I'll be back on May 27th with my brutally honest review. I won't hold back. If the performance is still on the piss at launch, I'll be the first to tell you to keep your money. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. Let me know in the comments, are you excited for this young Bond direction, or are you worried it's trying too hard to be Uncharted? And to see my breakdown of why the gaming community loves to call everything slop for the sake of views without actually playing the game, click the video on screen. You definitely don't want to miss that one. Thanks for watching, as always, and I will see you in the next one.